The rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the red earth into sticky mud. In the middle of the busy roadside, a thin woman stood by a wooden tray filled with ripe oranges. Her wrapper clung to her body, soaked through, and her headscarf dripped water into her tired eyes. Every passerby seemed to notice her, but not with kindness. Two young men sitting under a shop's zinc roof pointed at her and laughed so loud their voices rose above the rain. "Look at her, selling oranges in this storm like a mad woman," one of them shouted. Another joined in. "Who's even going to buy from her? She should go home before lightning strikes her stubborn head." But she didn't move. She simply pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders and stood her ground, water pooling at her bare feet. She didn't shout back. She didn't even frown. She just kept her eyes on the long road, as if she was waiting for something only she knew about. Minutes later, the distant sound of sirens broke through the rain. A convoy of black SUVs, their headlights piercing through the gray curtain of water, slowed down as they reached her. The laughter around her stopped. Every eye followed the cars as one of them pulled over, its tinted window sliding down. A hand waved her forward. To everyone's shock, she calmly picked up her tray, walked to the SUV, and after a short exchange, opened the back door and slid in. The convoy pulled away, leaving the stunned crowd staring at the empty spot where she once stood. What happened inside that car would change everything. In the small village of Ojadai, life moved with the rhythm of the seasons. The air always smelled faintly of roasting maize and wood smoke, and the streets buzzed with greetings and laughter. Here, everybody knew everybody, and news traveled faster than the harmattan wind. Awil, the woman who sold oranges at the roadside, was known to all. She was not rich, but she was respected, at least until the last few months. She had once been a cheerful presence in the market, calling out prices with a smile, her stall decorated with neatly stacked fruits. But lately, people had started whispering about her. Some said she was foolish. Others claimed she was cursed. It all began when her husband died suddenly after a short illness, leaving her with no money and two small children. Awil had only the orange trees her late father planted, and those became her only source of income. She would rise before the sun, pluck the ripe fruits, and set up her tray near the main road that led into the town. At first, people pitied her and bought from her out of kindness. But as the months passed, fewer and fewer customers came. New sellers moved into the market with bigger stalls and fresher stock. Awil's oranges, small and sometimes speckled, couldn't compete with the bright, shiny imports from the city. Still, she refused to give up her roadside spot. Even when rain lashed down or the harmattan wind bit at her skin, she stayed. To her, that patch of roadside was more than a selling point. It was a place of hope. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Mama Ezen, the oldest woman in the village, stopped by. She leaned heavily on her walking stick and looked at Awil. "My daughter," she said softly, "people will soon stop buying from you altogether. Why not move to the main market like others?" Awil smiled faintly. "Mama, I'm waiting. The right person will come one day. Not everyone who passes by is just passing." Mama Ezen frowned. "What are you waiting for, Awil? A miracle?" The young woman didn't answer. She simply looked toward the far end of the road, where the dust rose in lazy swirls under the setting sun. The next day, dark clouds rolled in before noon. By afternoon, the rain had begun, thick, unrelenting and cold. Traders hurried to pack their goods and run for shelter. But Awil remained by the roadside, her tray balanced on the worn stool beside her. From across the street, two young men, Chaik and Ifani, watched her. They had always found her strange. Too quiet, too stubborn. "She's wasting her life," Chaik said with a shake of his head. "No," Ifani replied with a grin. "She's entertaining us." They started shouting mockery across the street, their voices carrying through the rain. People hiding in shops chuckled, some shaking their heads. The woman ignored them. Then in the distance a faint rumble echoed, not thunder but the sound of engines. The road, slick with water, began to reflect the glimmer of headlights. And that was when a wheel's head lifted sharply. Her eyes locked on the bend ahead. The sound grew louder. A line of black SUVs appeared, moving in slow formation. Chaik and Ifani stopped laughing. Everyone nearby turned to look. Wheel stood. She adjusted her wrapper, lifted her tray, and took one step toward the edge of the road. And that was when the lead SUV slowed. The convoy came to a smooth stop right in front of a wheel, water splashing gently from the wheels. The tinted glass of the second SUV slid down, revealing a man in a dark suit. His face was half hidden in the shadows, but his eyes scanned her tray of oranges with surprising interest. The street went quiet. Even the rain seemed to hush for a moment. People peeked from shop verandas and doorways, their mouths half open. "You," the man said in a deep voice, gesturing at a wheel. "Come closer." She stepped forward without hesitation, balancing the tray with practiced ease. The man picked up one orange, rolled it in his palm and smiled faintly. "How much for all?" "All?" a wheel asked, her voice calm despite the dozens of eyes watching. "All," the man repeated, turning to glance briefly at the driver. "We will take everything." A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Even Chaik and Ifani stood frozen, the smirks wiped from their faces. A wheel nodded, told him the price, and watched as the driver handed her a crisp bundle of notes, more than enough for the oranges, and more than she had made in weeks. But before she could thank him, the man said something that made the crowd stir. "Leave the tray. Come with us." For a heartbeat, a wheel simply stood in the rain, her head slightly tilted as if weighing the meaning of those words. Then, without looking back, she placed the tray gently on the stool, opened the back door of the SUV, and stepped inside. The door shut with a soft thud. The convoy started moving again, water spraying up from the wheels. Within seconds they were gone, swallowed by the winding road. The village square exploded into whispers. "Where is she going? Who was that man? Do you think it's trouble?" Mama Ezen, who had been passing by, stood rooted to the spot, her knuckles tight around her walking stick. She had never seen such a thing in all her years. And deep inside she felt something stir, half worry, half wonder. But while the rest of the village buzzed with gossip, Awil's children, Nkem and Igioma, sat at home staring at the door, waiting for a mother who might not return before nightfall. By evening the rain stopped. The air smelled fresh, and the last streaks of orange sunlight lit up the rooftops. People were still talking about what they had seen. Some claimed it was a government official. Others insisted it was a rich businessman. A few, more suspicious, whispered that maybe Awil had been involved in something secret all along. Mama Ezen could not sleep. She tossed and turned on her bamboo bed, her mind replaying the image of the young widow stepping into that black SUV without a word. In the days that followed, the roadside spot remained empty. No oranges, no Awil. Children played near it, pretending to be her, but the adults were unsettled. People began to wonder if something bigger than any of them understood was unfolding. And they were right. On the fourth day, just as the market was closing, a small figure appeared on the road. It was Igioma, Awil's daughter, running barefoot, her face pale. She was gasping, her eyes wide with fear. She needs help," the girl cried, clutching Mama Ezen's wrapper. "Mama is in trouble." The market fell silent. And that was how the quiet little village learned that Awil's sudden ride in the convoy was not the miracle it had seemed. Because trouble had come, dressed in fine clothes, riding in a shiny car. The entire market seemed to freeze. Even the goats tied near the maize cellar stopped tugging at their ropes as Igioma's trembling voice echoed in the silence. Mama Ezen gripped the child's shoulders. "What trouble, my child? Speak clearly." Igioma's chest rose and fell rapidly. Mama said, "They took her far away." She said they promised to help, but now she is not allowed to leave. The little girl's lips quivered. "She sent me back with a man who dropped me by the bush path before the junction. She told me to run home and find help." The crowd began to murmur. Some shook their heads. Others exchanged nervous glances. Chaik, the same young man who had mocked a wheel in the rain, frowned and stepped forward. "Where exactly is she?" he asked. Ijeoma hesitated. She said, "A big compound near the main road to Oka. The one with tall gates and guards in black." That description alone made the crowd uneasy. Everyone knew the place, belonging to Chief Obadike, a wealthy but secretive man who rarely appeared in public. Whispers about him filled the air. Deals with politicians, mysterious visitors at night, and guards who didn't smile. Mama Ezen's voice was steady but firm. "We cannot leave her there. If what this child says is true, then a wheel may be in great danger." Still, not everyone agreed. "Let's not get involved," muttered Okachukwu, the yam seller. "Chief Obadike is powerful. We don't want trouble with him." "She went willingly into that car," another man added. "Maybe it's not our business." But Ijeoma's tearful eyes silenced them. "Please. She only wanted to sell oranges so we could eat. She said one day the right person would come. She thought he was the one." The guilt in Chaik's chest burned like hot coal. He remembered laughing at her in the rain, and now, knowing she might be trapped, the shame pressed heavy on him. He turned to Mama Ezen. "I will go with you," he said. They decided quickly. Mama Ezen, Chaik, and two other young men from the village, Emeka and Sunday, would travel to the gates of Chief Obadike's compound to find out the truth. The next morning they set out at first light. The air was still damp from the night's drizzle, and the road was quiet except for the call of early birds. They walked for nearly 2 hours before the tall gates came into view, black iron with golden crests, guarded by 2 men in dark uniforms. The group slowed their pace. Even from a distance they could feel the weight of the place. The walls were high, crowned with sharp spikes, and inside glimpses of well-kept gardens could be seen through the gaps. One of the guards stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "What do you want here?" Mama Ezen leaned on her stick, her voice unwavering. "We have come for our daughter, a wheel. She came here in a convoy 4 days ago. We want to see her." The guard's lips curved into something between a smirk and a sneer. "I don't know what you are talking about. No one like that is here." Chaik clenched his fists. "We know she's here. The little girl saw her. If you have nothing to hide, let us in to see her." The guard's expression hardened. "Leave now before you regret standing at this gate." They stood their ground, but the second guard stepped forward, his hand resting on the wooden baton at his side. The message was clear: push further and things would turn violent. Reluctantly, Mama Ezen motioned for the group to step back. They walked away slowly, but once they were out of sight she stopped. Her eyes glinted with determination. "We will not get her by asking politely," she said. "We must find another way in." The others exchanged uneasy glances. Breaking into the compound of a man like Chief Obadike could bring danger not just to them, but to the entire village. Still, Chaik spoke first. "If we don't try, she may never come out." That night, under the cover of darkness, they returned, this time through the narrow bush path behind the compound, where the wall was lower. They crouched among the tall grasses, the compound lights glowing in the distance. And then, just as they were about to decide who would climb first, they heard it. A wheel's voice, faint but urgent, calling for help from somewhere inside. It was enough to send chills down their spines. The sound of a wheel's voice cut through the night like a blade. "Mama Ezen, is that you? Help me." Chaik's breath caught in his throat. The others froze, scanning the compound walls as if her face might suddenly appear between the bricks. But all they saw was darkness, broken by the pale glow of security lights. "Quiet!" Emeka hissed, pulling them deeper into the shadows. "If the guards hear her shouting, they'll double the patrol." But Mama Ezen's old hands trembled on her stick. "She's close. She knows we're here." Her eyes were sharp despite her age. "We cannot leave without her tonight." The 4 crouched low, whispering quickly. The wall here was shorter, but still too high for any of them to scale without help. Chaik glanced at a neem tree that grew close to the compound's edge. Its branches reached just far enough to hang over the top of the wall. "If we climb the tree, we can drop down inside," he said. "But only 2 of us should go. If all 4 enter, it will be harder to hide." Mama Ezen shook her head firmly. "No, you boys go. I will wait here to guide you back if trouble comes." Without wasting more time, Chaik and Emika scrambled up the neem tree, careful not to make the leaves rustle too loudly. From the top, they could see part of the compound, a wide courtyard paved with tiles, a row of sleek cars, and beyond them, a small bungalow with light spilling from one window. They dropped silently inside, landing on soft grass. Crouching low, they crept toward the lit window. As they drew closer, they could hear voices. "You will stay here until the chief returns," a deep voice was saying. "You should be grateful. He could have left you in the rain with nothing." Awil's reply was firm despite the fear in her tone. "I didn't ask to be taken here. I have children. Let me go." The man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When Chief Obadiah sees you, he may decide to help you, if you are obedient." Chaik's fists tightened. He leaned closer to Emika. "We need to get her out now." They waited until the man left the room, his heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Then Chaik tapped softly on the window. Awil's eyes widened when she saw them. Without a word, she pushed the window open from inside. "Hurry," she whispered. But just as she was climbing out, a sharp voice rang out from behind them. "Hey! Who's there?" 2 guards were running toward them, batons raised. The noise of their boots on the tiles was enough to wake the sleeping dogs near the gate. A deep growl followed. "Run!" Emika shouted. Awil managed to slip out of the window, but they had only taken a few steps before a guard swung his baton. Chaik ducked just in time, grabbing Awil's hand and pulling her toward the neem tree. The dogs were barking wildly now, their chains rattling. Mama Ezen, waiting outside the wall, could hear the chaos inside. Her heart pounded as she gripped her stick and peered into the darkness. Then she saw it. 3 figures scrambling up the tree, with one limping slightly. The shouts behind them were growing louder. But just as Chaik reached the top branch, a guard's hand shot out, grabbing his ankle. If they failed now, all of them would be caught inside Chief Obadiah's compound, and no one would know what became of them. Chaik's fingers dug into the branch, his muscles straining as the guard's grip tightened around his ankle. The man's voice was a low growl. "You think you can break into Chief Obadiah's house and leave alive?" Emika was already on top of the wall, reaching down desperately. "Chaik, give me your hand." But the guard yanked hard, pulling Chaik halfway back down. Below them, the barking dogs were going mad, lunging against their chains. Awil clung to the trunk, her breath ragged, her wrapper snagged on a branch. In that instant, Mama Ezen made her move. She reached through the low gap between the neem's roots and the wall, jabbing her walking stick sharply into the guard's wrist. The man shouted in pain, releasing Chaik's leg. "Climb, boy!" Mama Ezen barked. With a burst of strength, Chaik pulled himself up, grabbing Emika's hand. In seconds they were all over the wall, sliding down into the tall grass outside. They didn't stop to speak. They ran, branches scratching their skin, mud splashing under their feet, until the compound lights faded behind them. Only when they reached the safety of a bamboo thicket did they finally stop, panting hard. Awil leaned against a tree, her chest heaving. Her eyes glistened, but not from tears alone. "They lied to me," she began, her voice trembling. "The man in the convoy. He told me he was sent by someone who wanted to help poor traders in the village. He said there was a program to buy our goods in bulk and give us better stalls in the city. He even paid for all my oranges." She looked down at her wet, dirty feet. "I believed him." Chaik frowned. "So why take you to Chief Obadiah's house?" Awil swallowed hard. "Because I look like someone important to him." Mama Ezen's face tightened. "What do you mean, look like someone?" Awil hesitated before speaking. "I overheard the guards talking. Chief's first wife, his favorite, died years ago. She was from another village. They said I looked just like her when she was young. The man in the convoy was his cousin. He brought me to remind the chief. And maybe to replace her. Her voice broke. They never intended to help me. Silence hung in the air. The rainwater dripping from the trees seemed suddenly loud. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Emika asked quietly. I couldn't, a wheel whispered. They took my children to my sister's house before bringing me to the compound. They said if I caused trouble, my children would suffer. I waited until a worker smuggled Igioma to the road and told her to find help. Mama Ezen's old eyes flashed with fury. So they thought they could take you because you are poor and alone. Awil nodded. The group knew this wasn't over. The chief would not simply let her escape without consequence. The convoy, the guards, the threat against her children, none of it would just disappear. And yet, under that bamboo thicket, Mama Ezen's voice was steady and certain. If they think they can treat us like pawns, we will show them that even a small village can fight back. The plan they would make in the days to come would put the entire community in danger, but it might also be the only way to keep Awil and her children safe. Far away, back at the compound, a guard stood in the courtyard, holding the scrap of Awil's wrapper that had torn on the branch. His voice was cold as he called into the house. They've taken her. Should I tell the chief? And the answer came in a tone that sent shivers down his spine. No. Let him find out when I'm ready. This is going to be interesting. For the next 3 days, Ajadai village felt like a drum pulled tight, silent but ready to burst at the slightest touch. Awil stayed hidden in Mama Ezen's back room, away from windows and prying eyes. Her children clung to her, never letting her out of their sight. Meanwhile, Chaik, Emika, and Sunday kept watch from the edges of the village, scanning the dusty road for any sign of a black SUV. The tension grew when strange men began appearing in the market. They were not from Ajadai, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing dark glasses despite the sun. They bought nothing, asked no questions, but stood around as if waiting. Whispers spread fast. They're looking for someone. They say Chief Obadiah's men are here. Better stay out of their way. One evening, as the sky deepened into purple, the men finally made a move. 2 of them walked straight to Mama Ezen's house, their heavy boots thudding on the dusty ground. They didn't knock, they pushed the door open and stepped inside. Awil froze where she sat, her heart slamming against her ribs. We've come for you, one of the men said simply. Chief wants to speak to you himself. Mama Ezen's back straightened, her walking stick tapping the floor like a warning drum. This is my house. You don't order anyone here. Leave. The taller of the 2 men gave a small, humorless smile. We can take her quietly, or we can make noise. Your choice. Before anyone could answer, Chaik burst in from the side door, gripping a wooden pestle like a club. His eyes were hard. If you want her, you'll have to go through me first. The men exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. Then the shorter one leaned closer to Awil and murmured, The chief is patient for now. But he gets what he wants in the end. They left without a fight, but their footsteps echoed long after they were gone. That night, the elders gathered in the village square. The air was heavy, and the firelight flickered on their serious faces. It was decided, if the chief wanted to force his will on them, they would not bow. But they could not simply hide Awil forever. The pressure on the village would only grow. We must take this to the palace, said Elder Okafor. The Igui must hear of it. The chief's land may be outside our village, but he cannot take one of our own like a goat in the night. It was a risky plan. Everyone knew that Chief Obadiah's wealth reached far and his influence touched even the palace. Still, the elders agreed to send a delegation. Awil, Mama Ezen, and 3 elders would go to the Igui's court to tell the truth. The journey would take them through the main town, and the road passed dangerously close to Obadiah's estate. Dawn they set out. The air was cool and mist clung to the ground. The cart carrying them rattled over the uneven road. For a while it was quiet, each person lost in thought. Then, just as they reached the long stretch of road bordered by tall palm trees, the sound came, a deep rumble of engines. A black convoy appeared behind them, closing in fast. The cart driver's eyes went wide. That's them. The SUVs surrounded the cart, forcing it to a stop. Doors flew open and men in dark suits spilled out, their faces grim. From the largest SUV, a man stepped down. Not the chief, but the same one who had first bought all of Awil's oranges in the rain. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. You should not have left the village, Awil. Now we do things my way. The guards moved in, their boots crunching on the gravel. Mama Ezin tightened her grip on her stick. Chike's warning from the night before echoed in her mind. If they tried to take Awil again, there might be no coming back. And now, with no one around but the mist and the palm trees, the convoy had all the power. The morning mist clung to the road, making the black SUVs look like shadows creeping closer. Awil's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Mama Ezin's grip tightened on her walking stick, her sharp old eyes never leaving the man who had first lured Awil into the convoy. You think you can scare us? Mama Ezin's voice cut through the cold air like a whip. You have wealth, but you don't have the blessing of this land. The man smirked. Blessings don't matter when you have power. He motioned to his men. Take her. 2 guards stepped forward, but before they could reach the cart, Elder Okafor suddenly stood up, lifting a small leather bag from beneath his wrapper. From it, he scattered a handful of white powder onto the road. The wind shifted, carrying the sharp, bitter smell toward the guards. They froze mid-step, glancing at each other. Everyone in the region knew that white chalk from the shrine was not just a sign. It was a curse to anyone who disrespected its warning. You touch her now, Elder Okafor said, his voice steady, and the land itself will rise against you. The men hesitated. The leader's smirk faltered for the first time. In this part of Igbo land, even the most powerful men feared the spiritual laws they could not control. Mama Ezin seized the moment. We will go to the palace. If the chief wants to challenge us, let him do it before the Igwe's eyes. For a long, tense moment no one moved. Then, with a sharp wave of the leader's hand, the guards stepped back. Go, he said coldly. But understand, this is not over. By midday they reached the palace. The Igwe sat on his carved wooden throne, the air thick with the scent of incense. Elders and chiefs from surrounding villages lined the walls, listening as Elder Okafor recounted the entire story, from the rainy roadside to the attempted abduction on the road that very morning. When Awil spoke, her voice trembled at first, but soon grew steady. I am a widow. I have nothing but my oranges and my children. I ask only for the right to live without fear. The Igwe's face was unreadable as he listened. But when she finished, he leaned forward. Call for Chief Obadike, he ordered. Gasps filled the hall. Summoning a man like Obadike to answer for his actions was not something done lightly. 2 days later, the chief arrived at the palace, walking in with the calm confidence of a man used to bending rules. He bowed to the Igwe, then turned his gaze on Awil. I did nothing wrong, he said smoothly. I only sought to help this woman. If she misunderstood my intentions, that is unfortunate, but it is no crime. Mama Ezin's eyes flashed. Help. By keeping her locked in your compound. By sending men to drag her from her home. The hall buzzed with murmurs. The Igwe raised a hand for silence. If your intentions were pure, Chief, you will have no objection to swearing before the gods that you will never trouble her or her children again. The chief's jaw tightened. Everyone knew that swearing falsely before the gods was a dangerous thing. Misfortune would surely follow. After a long pause he spoke. I will swear. But his eyes told a different story. This was far from finished for him. That night, back in the village, Awil tried to rest, but her mind would not settle. She knew men like Chief Obadike did not forgive humiliation easily. If he could not touch her openly, he might still come in the shadows. And so, as the moonlight spilled through Mama Ezin's window, A wheel made her decision. She would not just wait for him to strike again. She would take the fight to him, cleverly, and in a way that even his wealth and power could not stop. The plan she began to form would require courage, secrecy, and the help of the entire village. But if it worked, it would strip away the chief's power forever. And when it was done, the same road where they once laughed at her selling oranges in the rain would be the road where her enemies lowered their eyes in shame. The next morning, a wheel rose before dawn. The cocks were still crowing in the distance, and a thin layer of mist blanketed the village. She wrapped her old headscarf around her head, just as she used to when selling oranges, and stepped outside. Today, the roadside would be her battlefield, not with fists or weapons, but with something far more powerful. She had already told Mama Ezen her plan. By the time the sun began to rise, the village women were gathered in the square, carrying trays of oranges, baskets of cassava, and pots of palm oil. Chaik and the young men stood nearby, whispering instructions. The elders came too, each holding the sacred white chalk from the shrine. Word spread quickly. Today we take back our dignity. They moved together as one, dozens of villagers, toward the main road that led straight to Chief Obadiah's compound. A wheel walked in front, her tray of oranges balanced perfectly, just like on that rainy day. But this time she wasn't alone. When they reached the big black gates, they didn't shout or throw stones. They simply began to sell. The women spread their wares right outside the gates, filling the air with the sound of bargaining and the smell of ripe fruit. Chaik and the other young men made sure no one blocked the road, but they kept a sharp eye on the guards. It wasn't long before curious passers-by stopped to buy, and soon a small crowd gathered. The scene looked innocent, but everyone there knew its meaning. It was a public reminder that a wheel belonged to the people, not to a man's greed. Inside, Chief Obadiah heard the commotion. He stormed to the balcony, his face darkening as he saw a wheel at the front, smiling calmly as she sold an orange to a laughing trader. The humiliation burned in his chest. He sent his guards to chase them away, but when they reached the crowd, the elders stepped forward and drew the sacred chalk line across the ground. "Cross this line," Elder Okafor warned, "and you defy the gods." The guards froze. Even the boldest among them knew better than to invite a curse. More people began arriving from nearby villages, curious about the spectacle. Some brought drums, others clapped and sang songs about justice and pride. The road outside Obadiah's compound turned into a festival of resistance. By midday, even men from the palace had arrived, sent by the Igui after hearing that the chief was facing a crowd at his gates. They watched in silence as a wheel stood tall, her headscarf fluttering in the warm breeze, a living symbol of defiance. Finally, the palace messenger spoke. "By the Igui's order, Chief Obadiah is forbidden from disturbing this woman or her family again. If he does, his lands will be taken and given to the community." Cheer erupted. A wheel felt tears prick her eyes as she set down her tray and hugged her children. The chief turned and walked back into his compound without a word, his pride shattered. From that day on, no one in Ojadai laughed at the woman who once sold oranges in the rain. They remembered how she stood her ground, how her courage brought the whole village together. A wheel returned to her roadside spot, not because she had no choice but because it was hers. The oranges sold faster now, and sometimes people came just to greet her and hear her story. And on quiet afternoons, when the rain fell softly on the red earth, she would smile to herself, because she knew that power did not always come from wealth or position. Sometimes it came from standing in the rain, holding on and waiting for the right moment to fight back.